I'm sorry. You ready? All right. We want to welcome you to our City Commission regular meeting. We ask that you turn off or silence all cell phones. Meetings are televised every day on Channel 2 at 7 p.m. and at midnight. At this time, we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance followed by meditation, silent meditation. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Amen. At this time, we'll have proclamations. Colonel Lynn Rolfe. How you doing, sir? Good. Members of the United States Armed Forces began serving in an advisory role to the government of the Republic of South Vietnam in 1961. Thank you. And in 1965, United States Armed Forces ground combat units arrived in Vietnam. And by the end of 1965, there were 80,000 United States troops in Vietnam, and by 1969, a peak of approximately 543,000 troops was reached. And on January 27, 1973, the Treaty of Paris was signed, which required the release of all United States prisoners of war held in North Vietnam and the withdrawal of all United States armed forces from South Vietnam. Now, therefore, I, Jermaine Wilson, Mayor of the City of Leavenworth, Kansas, hereby proclaim March the 29th, 2019 to be Welcome Home Vietnam Veterans Day. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jermaine.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate it. Just a few words. First two come to mind is welcome home. I want to thank all our veterans here today for serving our country when you were called, especially at a time when it wasn't very popular to heed the call. Cab guys ain't supposed to get choked up for this stuff. Like your fathers before you and mothers, you put your dreams on hold for our nation. But before answering Uncle Sam's call, many of you probably never traveled out of the country, maybe even your state. I sure hadn't, from Indiana. Made a trip to Michigan, that was about it before I marched off to West Point. We were sent to Vietnam, a place where someplace somewhere on the other side of the world. And most troubling, you and we were sent for a reason that many Americans actually question. But you answered the call to serve, and I thank you, even if many people were ungrateful. Most of you deserved much better when you came home, a lot better. Weren't any parades. Instead of a thank you, some people may have sworn at you, or maybe even worse. You're not treated like the heroes you are, but you persevered. You didn't give up on yourself or each other. Us band of brothers and sisters, carrying the burden of physical and mental scars, you persevered. You gave back to the community. We still give back to the community and to the nation, just like our parents had done before, and have played a pivotal role in building our cities, our counties, our states, and our nation. And after so many in America had turned their backs on us, we taught Americans that no matter how you feel about a particular military operation, no matter how you feel, they need to honor and respect the men and women who answered the call and put their lives on the line and paid, in most cases, in many cases, the ultimate sacrifice. Today, we see that attitude as we welcome home those who have served in Iraq, Afghanistan, Bosnia, Grenada, and elsewhere around the world. We Vietnam veterans said when we came back, we would never let the nation turn their backs on another generation of warriors, ever. So very quickly, and I'd like you to stand, Airman 3rd Class Larry Wardlow, United States Navy, served on the Bonham Richard, 66 to 69. Keep standing, Larry. Spec 5, Tommy Rodriguez, Army, 6th of 31th Infantry, 9th Infantry Division, 66, 67, 68, 69. Spec 4, Mike Haddock, United States Army, 5th Mech, 12th Cav, Scouts out, 68, 69. Bill Inglos, United States Air Force, 66. Ron Bishop, E5, Navy. I can't read your he was on a boat. 65 to 69. And Ron happens to be our state vice president for the BVA and also president of the Ottawa chapter of the BVA. CW 5, Walter Schley, Marine Corps, Company B, 7th Maintenance Battalion, 1st MARV Division, 67-69. He's also our local VVA Chapter 75 president and also president of the Purple Heart Association. Kerry Young, Spec 4, United States Army, 35th Engineers, 66 to 67. Staff Sergeant Teresa Bender. Can you get up? Kerry just had 2 knee operations. United States Army, 30, no, that's the wrong one. 1st Army Medac Attachment. Terry actually took care of our dead as they were shipped back home. 60, 72, 73. And E5 Roland Mayhew, Marine Corps. 1st 7th Bravo. He served in 66, 67. And he is also the State Council President for the BVA chapter in our association in the whole state of Kansas. So we've got a lot of Vietnam vets, and I think, Larry? Is there any, I just wanted to ask anybody else in the audience that I missed.
Vietnam, Mr. Griswold and I are both Vietnam Air vets.
Thank everybody again. Welcome home. You are the heroes.
Yep.
And I will just say it. I don't say it often enough, but we officers appreciate the enlisted and non-commissioned officers that kept us going.
Right.
Thank you.
Next person, Mr. Matthew. How do you say your name? Very good. Come on. Know your name?
No, you didn't.
Know your name. All right. Libraries are not just about what they have for people, but what they do for and with people. And libraries have long served as trusted and treasured institutions, and library workers and librarians fuel efforts to better their communities, campuses, and schools. And librarians are leaders in their institutions and organizations, in their communities, in the nation, and in the world. Now, therefore, I, Jermaine Wilson, Mayor of the City of Leavenworth, Kansas, hereby proclaim National Library Week. April 7th through April 13, 2019 is National Library Week. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I just want to point out that we really appreciate the commission recognizing this week every year. It's not something that we take lightly. We really try to put some programs out there that everyone can enjoy. So on the 7th of April, a Sunday at 2 p.m., we're going to host a musician named Billy Kemp in our Yon Room. So he will bring his personal music. He is a musician, a songwriter, and a singer. On Tuesday, the 9th of April, we're going to host Ken Church, who does his life and times of Mark Twain for all you Twainiacs. And on Thursday, the 11th, the Leavenworth Historical Society is going to do a program called Hollywood versus History, The Buccaneer, the movie about the Battle of New Orleans with everyone's favorite bald actor, Yul Brynner, as Jean Lafitte, and I believe, who played Jackson in that one? Charlton Heston plays General Andrew Jackson. So those are a few of the special events that we're hosting along with our normal course of children's events for the week. So just wanted to let you know, and anytime anyone wants to know about what's going on at the library, our website, www.leavenworthpubliclibrary.com, leavenworthpubliclibrary.com, has a calendar that you can click on to see what's going on at the library. So again, thank you all very much.
Melissa Bauer. The Leavenworth City Commission is committed to working toward making the city of Leavenworth the most attractive, livable, healthy, and vibrant community possible. And your elected leaders realize it takes the goodwill and hard work of all citizens to achieve such lofty visions, and are therefore encouraging all Leavenworth citizens to assume responsibility in maintaining a clean and attractive neighborhood environment. Now, therefore, I, Jermaine Wilson, Mayor of the City of Leavenworth, Kansas, hereby proclaim April the 6th, 2019 to be Leavenworth Spring Cleanup Day. Thank you.
So our Spring Cleanup Day is Saturday, April 6th, and we will begin with a kickoff event, 8:30 a.m. at Warren Middle School. And the deadline is passed for signing up, but it's never too late to come and pick up trash. If you want to participate that day, you can just show up and we'll find a spot for you to pick up trash. Some of the other free services that are going to be offered on Saturday, April 6th are listed on this blue flyer. One of the things that's missing from the flyer this year is the brush site is going to be unfortunately closed because of flooding. It's just not going to be reopened in time. But we will have document shredding sponsored by Citizen Savings and Loan. It's going to be 10 to 12:45 at their 5151 South 4th Street location, and then 1 to 2 at their 312 South 5th Street location. The recycling center is going to be open. There's going to be bulk item drop-off like tires, furniture, metal, and household hazardous waste will also be available that day. And all of the information is on the city's website. So hope to see you there. Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, old business, consideration of previous meeting minutes for March 12, 2019, regular meeting minutes. Any questions or comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the minutes from the March 12, 2019 regular meeting as presented.
Okay.
Motion has been seconded. Begin voting with Commissioner Dedeky.
Aye.
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 Motion carried 4-0. Next item on the agenda, consideration of second consideration ordinance 8098, Chapter 10, alcohol beverage. This requires a roll call.
Mr. Mayor and Commission, our city clerk's going to update you on the changes between first reading and second reading before we take a vote tonight.
Okay.
So at the March 12th meeting, the City Commission reviewed the changes that we had put into place and placed that on first consideration. Since that time, the city attorney and I talked about one of the chapters, or one of the sections, section 10-2, city-owned property, and added back in, it's existing in the current code, and we had kind of gone back and forth whether it needed to be there, it didn't need to be there, and we landed on it needed to be there. And it's just the properties that were already approved by the commission over the years to allow alcohol or cereal malt beverage with any applicable permits that are required. So we've added that back in and made just a couple other minor little changes in section E of that same section, or subsection E, just marked out city-owned premises and facilities. That was no longer needed in there. So other than that, those were the changes that we made since you looked at it on first consideration. And if you have any questions, or if Mr. Waters wants to add anything
Yeah, I've
to
got
that.
just one other comment. Mr. Preisinger, this goes to the question that you raised, and I informed you incorrectly about the ability of other stores to sell things. It's not part of our ordinance. I think that's why I overlooked it. Went back and looked at the legislation that was passed, and it does allow liquor stores now to sell other goods and such, provided it doesn't exceed 20% of their sales on it. So there was a limitation, but I did want to make sure I clarified that for you. It's not addressed in our ordinance because it doesn't need to, but the original legislation does allow for that.
So, starting April 1st, if you go into a liquor store and need some potato chips, they can.
They can sell those as long as the revenues don't, it doesn't make up more than 20% of the revenue.
Yeah, very good. And of course, in line with the rest of the country, that's good.
Mr. Mayor, I've got two things. It's on page, two-thirds of the way down on page 11. It's section 10-2, and it's subparagraph F. And it's just, it says, any person violating the provisions of this section shall be deemed guilty of a misdemeanor. Is that what we want to say, or do we want to say charged with a misdemeanor? And then, because it said upon conviction, shall be punished by a fine of not less than $50 nor. So, I mean, I'm just wondering if we need to say charged with a misdemeanor, or is that?
This was the original language of the ordinance, if I remember right, and I think where I would say it's okay is that a person has to be deemed to have violated it. So you can be charged with something, but I think that implies that the person has to be found guilty of actually be found to have violated the section.
Can we say?
We can't change it.
I mean, what about violated instead of guilty? I just, the connotation of I don't know, I just think I would use the term violated, but I'm not gonna stress over it. I just pointed out because,
if you wanted to kind of word it on the fly, I would probably say something like, any person deemed guilty of violating the provisions of this article.
something like that. Yeah.
That might be how I word it. I think there might be other sections that are identical to that throughout the code that I hadn't changed.
Yeah, I just got a little mixed up with the guilty and then the conviction was coming, so I'm not gonna get hung up on it. I just stopped when I was reading that. The other thing is $100 fee, is that where we wanna be?
Yeah, and so that was the suggestion by staff on first consideration. So if the commission wants to, would need to make that determination this evening if that is the fee that you're in agreement with.
I'm just, I don't know, has it been, in the past, has it been 100 or?
We haven't had one, yeah.
My gut feeling was that
In the
it was a
past-
little high, but that was just a gut feeling, so I wanted to bring it up.
So what did the other cities?
In the past, if we had something that was for a special event, they paid the full $200 annual fee. I did talk to other cities, and most of them went ahead and charged the full price, even for a special event. Some of them charged a little less. I just recommended maybe half of what the annual fee is. That was just a recommendation by staff, just after talking with some other cities, and didn't really feel like the full price for a year was maybe where we should be.
Right. I don't know, it just struck me as maybe $50 would be better, but it depends what we have to put into it in terms of, the work that we have to do as far as a staff and to get, to process these permits and et cetera. So should be some tie to that, but like I said, I'm not hung up on it, it just seemed a little high to me, but.
Any other comments in regards to the price? Mr. Dedican? No, I have nothing. No. Well, this requires a roll call. Begin voting with Commissioner Preisinger.
Aye.
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 Vote carried 4-0. Next item on the agenda, new business, citizen participation. Anyone from the audience that would like to speak? Ms. Jennifer Morgan and Mr. Thomas.
Good evening. I'm Jennifer Morgan, and I'm the Director of Theater at Leavenworth High School. And tonight we have some amazing students, some of our Stella Theater Club officers, who would like to present some amazing information to you that really, for Leavenworth, is taken to heart because our organization, our group of theater students, truly believe that theater changes lives. And so tonight, in celebration of Theater in Our Schools Month, our steering committee for the advocacy group for Kansas Thespians, and these two were part of the group who led a Kansas Theater in Our Schools Advocacy Day at the Capitol on March 11th. Pretty amazing. They're going to present to you tonight some information that is incredibly important for us to remember, including some of their own stories. You will notice that there is a leave behind folder at your place, and yes, the popcorn is complimentary of Leavenworth High School Theater as well. So I'm not going to speak anymore because Thomas Yambo Rios and Michelle Denny are much better at this than I am. So thank you so much, and this is Thomas and Michelle.
Hi, I'm Michelle. March is also known as Theater in Our Schools Month, a time where we celebrate all the things that theater does and the opportunities it creates for an individual. Theater in our schools offer a home for all who enter, a place where they feel a sense of belonging and a safe place to be themselves without judgment. Theater in Kansas schools have received many achievements over the 2018-2019 school years at the national, state, and city levels. High school theaters have received a multitude of accomplishments throughout the past years. First, young children taught in theater arts classrooms have proven higher attendance rates. Second, 95% of high schools now offer theater-related extracurricular activities, and 98% of school administrators believe that theater programs strengthen students' critical thinking, collaboration, communication, and leadership skills. Positions and performances at the national level have also been blessed upon our Kansas educators and students. Currently, David Hastings of Olathe South High School was selected to serve on the National Education Theater Association Board of Directors. Faith Lopez currently serves as one out of the 5 student state thespian officers, and she is from Leavenworth High School. Lastly, Kansas has 3 schools performing at the International Thespian Festival in June. These schools include Garden City, McPherson, and the Kansas All-State Musical, including 3 Leavenworth pioneers, which are Dylan White, Joshua Hungerbeeler, and Thomas Yambo. All these accomplishments support Kansas theater become known at the national level. However, one specific event that has changed Kansas theater was Theater in Our Schools Advocacy Day at the Capitol in Topeka. On March 11th, 2019, over 200 high school students attended and spoke about their experience with theater and how the government officials can change issues that we face, also known as the asks. This event was the first to have legislators have interactions with a wide range of theater students from their city and neighboring ones in their very own workplace. Now there are many high schools around the nation that allow theater programs. However, out of all the theater programs, Leavenworth High School Theater, or Stella, has put Leavenworth and Kansas as a whole on the map, with running in second place in the Theater in Our School Impact Award arranged by Educational Theater Association, being the only Kansas winner for the NBC Rise grant of $10,000 to fix our splintered stage, and receiving third place from the Seize the Day Challenge organized by Playbill and Disney Corporations. Leavenworth High School Theater is different from any other theater that we have been exposed to. The community outreach that we strive for is never ending. From the Rep Theater Company's Theater in the Park at Haymarket Square, the Advanced Drama Tour of Hope Puppet Project, where they go to Children's Mercy's Ronald McDonald's homes and perform for families going through terrible times, and the Anti-Bullying Tour around surrounding elementary schools, where they teach young minds how to be different is okay, and the reason why bullying is not. At Leavenworth High School, students involved in Stella have felt a place where they belong, a place where they can go when no one else wants them, a second home.
Hi, my name is Thomas. Students from freshman to senior year have their own individual stories about theater. But tonight, I'll be telling my own personal story of how theater did not just change my life, but saved it. Before I moved in with my father here in Leavenworth, I lived in a small town with even smaller-minded people. The kids would call me names and pick on my differences. I was a little brown boy with a high-pitched voice. What was I to do? This would continue until my 8th grade year, where I made the decision to move to my father's home. First day of freshman year was terrifying. Whose wasn't? I was afraid to be myself around other students because my fear of what they would say or do to me held me back from making friends. I didn't want to be in high school. I didn't even want to exist. Then came my very first Stella meeting. When I walked into the auditorium, I was very cautious and didn't want to make a fool of myself in front of the other theater seniors. But instead of me saying anything, they came to me first. And they were actually interested in who I was. They actually wanted me there. Ever since that day, theater has given me a chance to grow as an individual. The beginning of my sophomore year, my family and I discovered that I had atrial septic defect, a hole in my heart. In March of 2018, I had to have open heart surgery during my entire spring break. The following week, I was supposed to rest and take it easy, but it was the same time as the first Theater in Our Schools Advocacy Day at the Capitol. A normal, sane person would stay in bed, but fortunately, I'm a crazy person. I wasn't going to not be a part of this event. After all that theater has done for me, it would feel as I've betrayed someone that saved my life. Ever since that day, I understood what I wanted to do with my life: advocate for the arts. In conclusion, theater has raised my confidence enough to where I can do this. It has given me a place to express myself and saved me from myself. One time I told myself that I wouldn't live past 16. Here I am, 17, healthy, bully-free, and more importantly, here to say how crucial it is to keep theater in our schools and the importance of the arts in our students' lives. If there is one thing you take away from tonight, is that theater is more than a singer and a director. It provides skills and opportunities like this to change a kid's perspective on life, or life as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, we greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, general items. Consider request for Delaware Street closure, April 28, 2019.
City Clerk will handle this item. We also have our police chief, Pat Kitchens, here for this item.
Mayor and Commissioner, this is a request to authorize a street closure for the Cool Hand Loop Gravel Grinder Bike Race. They're requesting that the 400 and 500 blocks of Delaware be closed on Sunday, April 28th, from about 12:01 a.m. till about 7 p.m. That ending date is kind of whenever the last groups of bikers come through, so it could be sooner than that, but we went ahead and went with 7 just to make sure that we had that covered. And also to approve the sale and consumption of beer during the event. In the past, they've held this event at different places throughout the city. The place is just going to be kind of the starting and the ending point for the race. The racers then will go out and travel a route through the county and then come back here to complete the race. The coordinators of the event, the Santa Fe Trail Bicycle Shop, Brendan is here this evening. He can talk a little bit about it if you have any additional questions. But they're planning on having a couple of food trucks, a beer tent, which will be placed in the 400 block of Delaware. And the request for the 500 block of Delaware is needed so that as the racers come through, they'll come through there and then kind of end up through that 500 block. So we want to have that blocked off as well for their safety, and then also some additional barricades placed on 5th Street, again, to keep any cross traffic from coming through for the safety of the racers as well. The event coordinators did meet with staff on February 26th. Members of the police department, city manager, and various other departments talked to them about the event and the requests that they had. So what we have before you was what was agreed to with staff and what we thought would work best. At the time that I wrote the policy report, they were unsure as to who was going to be the beer vendor They have decided on Grinders. High Noon is going to do that. Grinders already has a brewer license and a caterer's license, so there's not any additional licensing required by the state or the city for them to participate in the event. They will have to rope off the area and designate the area that alcohol will be consumed. They're aware of that. We'll make sure, the police department make sure that that's roped off and visible to the people can't go beyond that premise. So the motion and what is being requested by the commission this evening is to approve the closure of the street during that time and the sale and consumption of beer during that time as well. Any questions that myself or the police chief or Brendan can answer?
How many people you plan to attend?
Mr. Mayor, we're hoping to have about 250 riders. Right now, we have 102 signed up, and we're over a month away. So we've exceeded what we did last year by quite a bit so far.
That's good.
Brendan, do you want to tell us about change in area and why you want to do it, where you're doing it, and a little more about the race?
Sure. We're very excited about this event. This is our 5th year. Every year, the event has grown. Many people are familiar with the Dirty Kanza in Emporia. It's a huge event. It's brought a lot of attention to the city of Emporia. And we have in the past done this event out on Dakota Street, which is a nice venue. It's at a barn and all that kind of thing. But we really felt like we're missing out on what is Leavenworth. You know, they're out here kind of on the fringe of town, and they really don't get to see what we have. So we're very excited this year. We're going to have the theater. We're going to use the theater Performing Arts Center the night before for our ride briefing. We're going to have our sponsors are doing promotions, and we're trying to get people to come down Saturday. Home 2 Suites and other businesses, hotels have offered deals for people to stay in town. So we really want to celebrate what is in Leavenworth, and we're very excited about that opportunity. And we think that downtown, we know there's restaurants down there. There are businesses that people can shop at. And we found in the past, people stayed, to our surprise. It's a 100-mile event for the long event. People stayed for hours out there, and we couldn't feed them. And they sat around and they stayed anyway. It's kind of the way, the nature of the event. So we think that if we have this downtown, there's going to be, kind of a celebration of what we have here in Leavenworth. We're very excited about it.
What's the distance of the race?
So we have 3 distances, a 25-miler, a 62-miler, and a 100-miler. Okay. And the 100-miler is going to go all the way to Troy, Kansas, and back. Wow. So it's going to be really neat.
Well, I understand closing the 4th and the 5th block. Are you intending to close 4th Street also?
No, sir. The only purpose...
Will be during the time that they take off?
When they take off, they're going to go straight west. So they're not going to go down 4th Street.
Okay.
Real quick question, what about closing 5th Street between Cherokee and Shawnee? Because that's where the finish line is going to be. You don't want cars going north or south on 5th Street. Well, I'm asking Chief or ask Mr. Sheehan, or is that...
That was the intent, sir. That we would close the 400 and 500 block and that intersection that joins them, which is 5th Street.
But if I'm coming north on 5th Street, when I cross Cherokee, I can't cross Delaware. So will 5th Street be closed at Cherokee and at Shawnee? So if I'm going, you follow what I'm saying?
Right.
Because all of a sudden a car comes through there. So
Yes, is the answer.
Okay, so we close, okay. And next question on the beer sales. I know they're going to have a roped off area, but finish line's at 5th and Delaware, right?
Finish line is east of 5th and Delaware, just east.
Just east. Can they make that whole block beer friendly? Because I can see somebody buying a beer down there and they're going to walk up, they want to walk up to the finish line and watch them. If they're outside that rope, it's a gotcha. It's just, can they somehow make that whole block beer friendly? I don't know. That's up to the chief or the clerk or something.
My understanding is that we rope off the area that they're allowed to have the beer. So outside that area, they cannot take the beer.
I kind of hope it extends, because I know people want to come up and watch their particular rider come across the finish line, and a lot of them might want to hand them a beer. And
that has happened before.
Yeah, so I just wish they could,
I have two thoughts. One of them is, I know that we're still working with the ABC on what exactly this would look like, so I would recommend that, two things. If you were to make a motion tonight, I would recommend that you approve the authorization or the issuance of a resolution. Depending on how this is structured, approval of the streets has to be done by ordinance or resolution. So number one, I would at least, if we don't have one in your package, I understand, but I think if you approve a resolution authorizing the closure of X, then if that is, and what is needed, that can be typed up and signed without having to come back before the governing body here. Second, yeah, I mean, I think you need to decide and approve what streets and what areas you're going to close as part of that. So, you know, if you want to approve more than is necessary, I suppose you could, or more than they want. You know, they will have to set those set bases aside, but if you wanted to approve and give them the option for it, or if they simply don't want to do it that way, they can keep it to how it is. But you would need to approve tonight, I think, what is it going to be, or at least what the maximum of it is, and not just say, yeah, we're okay with whatever it is, and then let them do it. You need to do it by resolution that you approve from here to here.
Actually, we did call ABC, and they said because the Grinders has the brewer license
Oh, because they have
and
the brewer-
a
oh,
caterer's
okay.
license, we did not have to do a resolution.
Well, I thought you're still having to close off. I would figure
I thought
they're
so
okay.
too, and I called them to verify that, whether or not we would
Yeah.
need that.
I would probably still do
and
the
to my
motion that
surprise,
way,
they
just
did.
because depending on who you talk to at ABC, you know, they have just lower level staff. I would probably do it that way just to ensure that nobody has to come back to you.
and Mr. Waters, can we say, and, well, Mr. Sheehan and Chief, I don't know if I'm talking out of school, can we say, and the 400 block of Delaware is beer friendly? So,
I think that's
is that, and I'm just posing that, ask what the other commissioners think, and obviously the chief sitting over there gnawing on his fingers, thinking, why is surprised you were talking?
Well, you're actually be approving the closure of streets. So it's not a matter of this area is beer friendly, but the street is open. You have to authorize that the street would be closed for those areas.
But whenever we authorize other festivals, we do designate a beer friendly or an alcohol friendly.
As long as you're closing it, right?
So I would. Come on, chief.
You know the drill.
So I would want to make sure that Grinders has the authority to do that beyond what they're going to do first. But then I don't care what the boundary is, I just need to know what it is. And so if we say that the boundary is this, then we'll enforce that using common sense and judgment, as long as folks are generally behaving themselves, which they always have. You know, we're not going to start rounding folks up. The key for us is what the boundary is. But Grinders, is it an outside event that they can extend on their caterer's license?
Because they hold the caterer's license, so typically, if there's an event and we're closing the streets, they have to get a temporary alcohol permit from the state, which then requires them to also submit that resolution. Because, when I called ABC, because they're not requesting a temporary liquor permit, they're already covered by their brewer license and their caterer license. I was told that we did not need to do a resolution and provide that to them because they're not getting the temporary alcohol permit, which requires a resolution on a special event.
So we are good, sir.
Good. Sounds complicated, but.
So do we want the resolution or not?
I still would do it that way. I'm looking at the statute right now, and I'm still.
That's fine.
It can't hurt us, right?
I'm still a little iffy. Yeah, I would do it that way.
So when we make this motion, in addition to putting the resolution at the beginning of the motion, are we going to designate the 400 block of Delaware as the beer?
Is it alcohol friendly or beer friendly?
Blocking up the streets.
Just beer.
Beer.
Just beer.
Are you okay with that, chief? You okay with that, Mr. Sheehan?
Yes, sir.
This time I entertain a motion.
I can do it.
Go ahead.
I move that we approve a resolution authorizing the closure of streets for the Cool Hand Luke gravel grinder event and approve the sale and consumption of beer during the event as presented and allow that sale and consumption of beer in the 400 block of Delaware.
Do we have,
I'm good with that.
do we need to put in the parameters of the street closures, or
I believe I heard that.
you just said as stated?
Yeah. It was, oh, the closure of streets was at the beginning.
Yeah, but do we have to say 400 and 500 block of Delaware and?
He said 400 block.
Oh, he did. That was for the beer. What about, are we closing Fifth Street? 100 and 200, 100 South Fifth, 200 South Fifth. We're closing that too.
Yeah, I think, do we have to be more specific than what I said at the beginning of the,
You can say the street closure as presented. I have it in the minutes of it. That would be
Okay.
fine.
So we'll have an X through there, close downtown, got it.
You said as
I
presented,
second.
and that's it.
yeah, I think we're good.
I second it.
Okay. Motion has been seconded to give voting with Commissioner Pricing.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried 4-0.
Good luck. Thank you.
Yeah, good luck. Have fun.
Next item, bids, contracts, and agreements. Consider bids for replacement police vehicles.
Police Chief Pat Kitchens will handle this item.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioner, the police department is before the governing body this evening asking for your authority to award a bid to Landmark Dodge in the amount of $115,992 for the acquisition of 4 2019 Dodge Charger police patrol sedans. Every year, the police department conducts a review of its fleet, and in this particular year, we identified 4 vehicles that we believe had reached the end of their useful life cycle, either through mileage or repair costs. And again, we identified 4 of them that met the criteria. The City of Leavenworth sends out a standard bid package to both regional and local vendors. We received 1 bid from Landmark Dodge in the amount. You note that there are slight difference. There are 3 all-black patrol cars and then 1 black and white cars. And then also, in addition to that, there is a service manual acquisition. Occasionally, about every 4 or 5 years, we tinker with the color scheme of the police vehicles. We will be using these for traffic enforcement for the targeting high-risk drivers. Occasionally, we change that a little bit to keep everybody honest. Funds are allocated in the 2019 CIP budget in the amount of $189,980 for the acquisition of these police cars. The remaining amount of money will be dedicated to the purchase of police equipment that goes into the police cars. Principally, most of that will be, we are starting to cycle out and replace our in-car camera and computer equipment that needs to be replaced. That amount remaining is $73,988. If we exceed we'll follow the finance rules as well with that. If it needs to, we'll come back and ask for your authorization on that. So again, I would ask you to approve the purchase of 4 2019 Dodge Charger 4-door sedans from Landmark Dodge at a total price of $115,992.
Chief, any idea why we didn't get any bids from our local car dealerships?
From a broader perspective, the police car issue is really undergoing a lot of changes. I'm not entirely convinced, as I sit here today, that Ford is going to produce the police car that they've been producing for the last 3 years, the Ford mid-size sedan. There's a lot of discussion about whether they're going to continue to do that. In addition to that, in this particular case, we believe that Landmark Dodge has the state contract for the Dodge Charger, and they're able to provide a lower bid than almost everybody else. That's probably the overriding factor. There's a lot of other discussion going on about like the Chevy Tahoe, Ford Explorer. We're paying very, very close attention to the issue, and so we felt like in the best interest of what we've been doing, it's best to stay with the Charger for now. But I really anticipate next year or the year after, potentially some significant changes to that.
Chief, we've got a 5-year warranty, limited warranty. Even though we buy an Independence, if you have to take it for warranty work, can you take it to the Dodge dealer in Lansing?
We do, yes, sir.
Okay, so you don't have to drive it all the way in?
Yes, sir, we do.
Okay. Thank you.
And what happens with the vehicles that go out of the fleet? You know, in other words, the 4 new ones will come in, and at some point, the 4 vehicles that are being replaced are auctioned off, or?
Yes, sir, we auction them off.
Okay. And once any proceeds, they come back to the city or the police department, how does it work?
I suppose it goes back into the big giant pot. We don't get it. That's a terrible decision, by the way.
Yeah, it just goes back into, it doesn't go into the police department, it'll go back to the city.
Okay.
And so these cars, they have more space than the previous cars that you have, correct? They're bigger inside, because I know that you had mentioned before that you guys were going to.
These cars are exactly the same, the ones that we've purchased in the last couple of years. What is likely to happen, which has me greatly concerned, is information from Dodge that there is a potential moving forward that even the Dodge Charger, they're going to make smaller by about 10 inches. And that doesn't seem like a lot, but prisoners going in the back seat, we have to have plenty of room. So they have not made that change this year. They're still the same size, but there's a high likelihood that that's going to change going forward, and so we're paying close attention to that.
Okay.
And just how many of these type of vehicles are in the fleet?
There are 24 police cars,
Okay.
black and white, and then there's other admin, detective cars aside from that.
Okay.
If there's no other comments, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll go ahead and move that we approve the purchase of 4 2019 Dodge Charger four-door sedans from Landmark Dodge at a total price of $115,992.
Second.
Motion has been seconded. Begin voting with Commissioner Dedeky.
Aye.
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 Motion carried 4-0. Next item on the agenda, consider bids for 14th and Potawatomi Culvert Replacement Project.
This would be 14th and Pawnee Culvert, and then our Public Works Director, Mike McDonald, will handle this item.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor and Commissioners, this is a stormwater project at 14th and Pawnee. This project is to address flooding that we have seen for many years. The picture on the overhead will identify the group of houses to the right of the center, and it's a row of trees with Metropolitan Avenue at the north top end down to Pawnee Street. That is a drainage channel. The houses on the west side of that, or excuse me, east side of that drainage channel have been impacted from creek bank erosion and flooding over the years. And this situation was identified as far back as the Viking Beach stormwater study in the 90s as a priority project. We are at this point getting ready to address the needs of this particular drainage basin. In 2015, we hired a designer to evaluate what we needed to do, and we focused on two broad alternatives. One was look at a detention basin project where we would back water up on the Bureau of Prisons property north of Metropolitan. And the other was to replace the failing structure. It's a wooden box culvert built by the railroad at this location a long time ago, replace it with a more modern structure that was not failing, and then look at the work we need to do downstream. Ultimately, after discussions with Bureau of Prisons, it was apparent that the detention project would go nowhere without their support, and that support was not coming. So we focused on the replacing the culvert on East Street. We have added a little bit to this project. A year or so ago, we extended the creek improvements north to Metropolitan to further stabilize the bank. And we've evaluated what we need to do downstream to Dakota and Kiowa. And at this point, there's plenty of work to be done. However, we do not have funds in our budget to accomplish that. So this project's been designed to not adversely impact the downstream properties. However, if the downstream projects do occur, we can make modifications to this structure to further improve the water flow. So first and foremost, this does replace a failing wooden structure. This is interesting. It looks better in this picture than it actually does when you get up close. I think it's kind of leaning a little, but it has been there an awfully long time.
How long is an awfully long time?
Probably the 1900s, early 1900s, be my guess.
Over 100 years, okay.
Possibly not any later than the 20s. The project was designed by Wilson and Company. It was distributed through Drexel Tech and a variety of plan rooms we send information to. We did have a pre-bid meeting with a lot of interest, and ultimately when we opened bids last week, we received 4 bids from qualified contractors. The lowest bid was from Cohorst Enterprises from Wellsville, Kansas.
They are here this evening if you have questions about them. It is a firm that we have not worked with before. However, our staff followed up on reference checks that were entirely satisfactory. In addition, they have done other work within Leavenworth County for generally private entities, but some public work. The engineer's estimate was $522,000. Their low bid was $552,393. In this construction bidding environment with the bustling economy, we believe that we have once again been impacted by a good economy, and we recommend that the City Commission approve the bids as presented to Cohorst Enterprises.
If we do approve the bid, will the work be done this year?
Yes, sir. In general, they have, there's a long lead time on reinforcing steel and interestingly enough, precast drainage structures. So in order for this project to move forward, they're going to need some slow time up front to order their steel. And they told us this evening that based on the time frame to get the precast drainage structures constructed, they're going to build this the old-fashioned way with forms. We haven't seen that on a large structure in some time, so this will be interesting. Once they get started, it is a 90-day project. They don't initially plan to do much of anything other than make sure that the plans reflect reality, and then they'll do all the work within the 90 days once they start. So it will be probably 6 weeks, 8 weeks.
6 to 8 weeks to get the steel so they can start pouring the structures.
So it should be done sometime in the summer or early fall?
Yes.
Or,
Yeah.
Will any of the property owners, adjoining property owners be disrupted, or will any of their property be disrupted during this construction?
We've got easements from all the adjoining property
Okay.
owners, so there will be some work on some of those properties.
And they just get reseeded when it's done?
Yes.
And okay.
Couple notes, the property owners around there have been very patient with the city in this process. It's a complicated design process because of the lack of participation from the Bureau of Prisons, without letting us, just the facts of the case are that the water that we're dealing with comes off the Bureau of Prisons property. It's all from the Bureau of Prisons, about 300 acres north, that drains into the city. So when we start talking about stormwater fee and rationale behind that, whose responsibility is that to pay for? Certainly not the property owners right there, but it impacts the city. A couple other things, we added some, I don't want to say aesthetic, but improvements along the creek bank to clean that up for those residents along through there. I know a lot of sediment and growth had accumulated over the years, so that was included in the project. And again, the phasing it so that the work that we do doesn't impact downstream. So that was sort of the complexities. But again, I want to thank those property owners who have been patient with us over the last probably, 3 to 5 years as we work through this project and get funding for it. And I think it's going to be a good project.
will Cohorst Enterprises and the city do quality control, quality assurance as far as, the normal things that?
Yes, we will review shop drawings to make sure that what they're bringing to the project meets our specifications, and the day-to-day construction will be inspected by city staff. I don't believe there's any specialty inspection requiring the design engineer on this project, but they may be in town on other business. I'm sure they'll stop by to take a look, but we will do regular inspection on this project.
And my last question is, Cohorst Enterprises has been in business for how long?
1996.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Welcome to Leavenworth.
Where is Wellsville?
Come on up.
Come on up, yeah.
Come on up. I've never heard of it before.
Just south of Leavenworth.
1235.
Okay, come up to the podium. Just want to talk briefly about the project and other work maybe potentially that you've done like this.
Yeah, been in business since '96, done storm work ever since. We do storm sanitary sewers, water lines.
Good.
We have 27 employees. We're do between $8 and $10 million worth of revenue a year.
You're down off of 35.
Yeah, right off I-35.
Okay, very good.
Does Wellsville still have that barbecue place they used to serve on newspapers?
Yes, it does.
Do they? It's still there?
Yes, it's still
Yeah, it's a good place.
Yes.
Stopped there a few times.
There's no other comments or questions. got
Thank
anything
you.
to say?
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll go ahead and, I move that the city commission accept the low bid received from Cohorst Enterprises for the project in the amount of $552,393.
Second.
Motion has been seconded. Begin voting with Commissioner Preisinger.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried, 4-0. Next item on the agenda, consider sole source bid for repairs to water pollution control clarifiers.
This will be Mike McDonald, Public Works Director, and Chuck Staples, the Superintendent out at the wastewater treatment plant.
Mayor, Commissioners, good evening. We're here to consider a bid from Clearstream Environmental for option 1 related to the repairs to primary clarifier number 3 and final clarifier number 1. If you look up here on the map, the round clarifiers are the primary. The one on the top left is the primary number 3. And the bottom two circular basins, they are the finals. And the lower one is final number 1. A little background. Wastewater treatment plant has 4 primary clarifiers and 2 final clarifiers. There's a redundancy built in treatment for effectiveness by having multiple clarifiers. However, having all key treatment processes fully operational is extremely important. Primary number 3 was new in 2005. On January 28, 2019, due to high winds, the surface skimmer on primary number 3 clarifier caught one of the rear covers that blew open and bent the arm backwards. This automatic control shut off the clarifiers. Final number 1 clarifier was new in 1972. On February 11th, 2019, the surface skimmer arm on the final clarifier stopped at the scum box. After draining the clarifier, we found that one of the A-frame supports was found to be broken and had caused the surface skimmer to lower into the water and then caught the scum box on the next rotation. This clarifier was also shut down by automatic controls. Mitch Hoffman, a representative for JCI, a supplier, scheduled to be on site to inspect primary clarifier number 3 the day before the second one failed. He was able to look at both clarifiers and provided JCI recommendations for repairs. He also suggested we have Larry DeBurke from Clearstream Environmental, the manufacturer, inspect the clarifiers. There are a limited number of companies that make these various arms for the clarifiers and even a further limited number of firms that manufacture the drive mechanisms to rotate the arms. Clearstream Environmental is the manufacturer of the drive mechanism that must be addressed. Based on the recommendations from JCI and discussion with other vendors, staff believes the situation would be considered as a sole source purchase for the following reasons. Any other vendor will need to visit on site and make recommendations as they are able to supply the necessary equipment. It may be necessary for the city to pay the cost of this inspection trip. The second one is prudent management for the clarifiers to minimize the time that they are empty when heavy rains may cause problems with meeting effluent quality regulations, and the spring rainy season is approaching. Clearstream Environmental provided 3 options for review. Details of these options are in your packet. All 3 options include a permanent repair to primary clarifier number 3 and various options for final clarifier number 1. Any temporary repairs will be further evaluated for further repairs or replacement as part of the WC budget process. Bids received for option 1 is $61,100. Option 2 was $129,500, and option 3, $329,000. Staff recommends at this time for approval of option 1 for $61,100 from Clearstream Environmental. This option, again, includes a permanent repair to final clarifier number 3, or primary clarifier number 3, excuse me, and a temporary repair to final clarifier number 1. And we take any questions. Mike, you got anything to add?
No, we do have the report that had a series of pictures in it. I have here, kind of flipped through them. In addition, I did have the flood picture of the clarifiers. And again, rather than just the aerial view, this is what the primary clarifiers look like when they're full of water and flood.
Chuck, one thing, can you talk about your recommendation for the permanent repair of clarifier 1, but just the temporary repair of final clarifier number 1? why you're comfortable with that, recommending that option.
Well, the main reason is if we go to order a new one, we need to get three bids. It takes 30 weeks to get the material, or 30 weeks to get the material on site. So what we can do right now is cut that A arm off and go ahead and put the final in service for the spring rainy season. We can do it without the skimmer arm temporarily, and then the process, get the paperwork done to get 3 bids and get the lowest bid on replacing the skimmer and the gearbox on those clarifiers.
Because those added features that you just talked about were part of option 2 and option 3?
Yes.
Because that was my big question, because there's not that much of a difference in the money between option 1 and option 2. But, I mean, you're telling us that there's a time factor here.
Yeah, it's 30 weeks to get new equipment in.
If we went with option 2 or 3, right?
2 or 3, yes. It might be next year.
Sure.
It might be next year before we're actually able to fully replace the mechanism, and it allows us to try to find other vendors and perhaps get competitive bids for the largest part of the project.
Yeah. And where's the money? I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Where's the money? Was this money budgeted, or is this coming, this wasn't something we foresaw
Exactly
happening?
right. It'll all come from the wastewater treatment plant budget, the enterprise funds budget. They have a small amount of dollars for these kinds of things. Now they have a much smaller amount of number.
Right.
So our 3-day reserve now is like an hour and a half reserve?
Well, that does connect to what we talked about last week, right?
It's exactly right. This stuff is in very good working order, but stuff that have from the 1970s has a tendency to break. For the most part, it's checked and serviced and does well, but you get windstorms or other type of, acts of God, and you end up replacing something. And anything out there is, as you can see, even one permanent repair and a temporary repair is $61,000.
We placed this final clarifier number 1 in service during the flood, so we could treat a little more water coming through because it has such a high flow. So what we'll do when the flow goes back is drain it down. And then if we get big rains again, we'll put it back in service temporarily.
Mr. Staples, when you're talking about it, you quoted the figure of 61,100. I don't know if that was a slip or if our...
Chuck is correct. They informed me just yesterday.
Oh, it is 61,1.
61,1, yes.
Okay, yeah, because that was a disagreement. Okay.
I've got a dumb question. Why can't we have this repaired? Why can't we have a welding or a company come in and cut that angle iron off that bottom, put a new support in, weld it up, and get it all done for 10 grand?
I think from the report that we have from Clearstream that the corrosion is so bad on that final number 1 that it would be almost impossible to get a good weld to stick to it.
Find the right picture here. Yeah, it doesn't look that bad looking at the picture, but photos can be deceiving.
Yeah, there's a picture up there of some of the rust.
This is the one that's broken off, I believe.
Yes.
And it lost a lot of cross-sectional area in the angle iron that's through there holding the works together. Staff recommended the option 1 was basically to get the one back in service with essentially a permanent repair and find the most cost-effective long-term.
So what are they gonna replace now for the 61 grand?
Well, 2 repairs. They're gonna fix the final number 3, which will be like brand new, the skimmer arm on that one.
Okay.
Or, I'm sorry, primary number 3. That'll be like brand new, and then they're going to take the A-frame off this, and they'll adjust the bottom and make sure it's level, and they'll do inspections and make sure that none of these arms that you see there are catching on the sidewalls.
Now, this A-frame that's bent, that's gonna disappear, correct? Is that part of that?
On the final number 1, that A-frame's gonna disappear, yes.
Okay. Then they take the new one and weld it into the framing, or is it framing all?
Well, I think we're good on primary number 3, that arm that's been is gonna be complete new.
Okay.
That's gonna go back in service.
Okay.
On the final, that's gonna be cut off,
And then we're gonna put the basin in service, and then we can get a new gearbox and sweep mechanism set up for next year sometime.
Okay.
I'll follow you.
Any other questions or comments? If not, I entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the bid with Clearstream Environmental for option 1 in the amount of $61,100.
Second.
Motion has been seconded. Begin voting with Commissioner Preisinger.
Aye.
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 Motion carried 4-0. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Next item on the agenda, Mr. Griswold's favorite. Consider sign fabrication agreement with Kansas Department of Corrections.
Mike McDonald, Public Works Director, and we have a guest here with us today.
All right. Yeah, Deborah, thank you. Blessed me with Agnes Correctional Industries here to talk about signs. And
Sure.
Curtis Marks is here. He's our operations superintendent. The sign people work for him. And Becky Beaver, our street foreman, is also here this evening. And we have interesting news for signs. In the policy report, we've tried to identify what brought us here this evening to review what we can with the commission. And if this all makes some level of sense, we want to move ahead and begin installing new signs in the community. The Public Works Department installs signs throughout the community. Generally, you see them as street name signs, stop signs, yield signs, speed limit signs, that sort of thing. The State Highway Department is responsible for the stop signs and speed limit signs on their portions that they maintain, which is 4th Street from Lemon Street South and Spruce Street from 15th Street West. How many signs are there to kind of build up to the excitement? The way we operate street name signs in the city of Leavenworth is if you are intersecting residential streets, you have, each street has a name. One pole will have a street name for each street. We use one-sided signs that are back-to-back mounted on the pole, so you will have 2 signs for each street that are on the same pole. So in essence, each pole has 4 street name signs on it. Plus, typically, there's a stop sign associated with it as well. So that's on one corner of the intersection on residential streets. If it is a collector street or an arterial street, you are set up is you get 2 street signs on opposite corners if possible, so that people on each side will have a chance to see the street names if they're looking for them. And also, they will tend to be the larger signs. So you end up with a lot of signs in a hurry, and our GIS department said that there are 1,047 intersections within the city limits of Leavenworth, and you do a little bit of math and a couple of assumptions, and you end up that there are approximately 5,600 street name signs within that 1,000 or so intersections. And the value of the signs, if you assume it's about $25 a sign, ends up in excess of $250,000. So it's a fairly substantial investment of public funds. The city has sought to keep up the signs for many years using a variety of methods. When I came here 30 years ago, they had the little die cutters and a roller, and you would roll it through and it would cut out the letters, and we'd pry the letter out and pry it off. And you would line it up on a vacuum table, and you would do all these processes. That was great then. All that equipment is long gone, and we operate a fairly modern sign-making operation with a couple of people and clerical help to operate it. And it's, I'd say it's tedious making signs when you have that many out there that need help. So we've looked at ways to shorten that. We've ordered complete signs from outside agencies. We've bought the metal blanks. I have some examples against the wall here. We apply our own. We've done lots of different things to try to make it work, but in this case where we're trying to make a large impact, we sought a better way. And we ran into Deborah's operation where they make street name signs and all kinds of highway signs. through the Kansas Correctional Industries that are a perfect fit for our goal, which is to improve signage throughout the community. We have reviewed their pricing. It's very competitive. In fact, I think it's under most commercial signage. And it is close. We have had several meetings to talk about how we should build signs and their signs. And we can hold some up. There are some of their signs. The brown one that says North Broadway. And that's probably the nicest one. And then 12th Street here that Mike Cooper has. And I think the message on the signs that I would, and that Metropolitan one is an example of a sign that is too small.
Yeah.
It should be a 12-inch sign, and it should be spread out a little bit. It should be that size. But the point I would like the commission to contemplate is these are big. They are not small little things that you can print off on your computer at home.
They're 4 square feet of material going to this.
And just for comparison, the really big one against the wall that says Thornton Street is one that was on the traffic signal mast arm. This was the one that was knocked over in the traffic accident. They can make these also, but this is not the type of sign that we're talking about, but it is much larger than you really contemplate when you drive down the highway. So after a series of meetings, reviewing how we make signs and what we try to accomplish, what Kansas Correctional Industries is able to do, we think we can make this work for us. We'll ask the commission, first of all, if this is something that is rational, the direction you'd like to proceed, we would like for the city manager to be able to approve purchases with Kansas Correctional Industries related to the signage. And then I've kind of identified some of the crazy things you have to think about on signs. There are rules on signs. There's a big, thick federal book on manual and uniform traffic control devices. And the signs that we make and the signs that they make all conform to that. Essentially, they're green signs. They have a reflective component to them, so you can see them, read them at night. The lettering is a defined style. You do have some options, but the kind of the industry style is what the highway type B, modified highway B font. So it's a very specific thing, and these signs reflect that. And in order to further standardize, we've tried to rationally state that our minimum sign length should be 30 inches for residential streets, and collector would be 9-inch tall, 30-inch long signs. The ones that are on collector and arterial streets are going to be 12 inches tall, and typically 30 inches to 48 inches, depends somewhat on the street name. A lot of our street names are numbers, 4th Street, 10th Street, 20th Street, that sort of thing. So you can get away with a tall sign that is relatively short, but we'll try to keep them 30 to 48 inches. We like to stick with one-sided signs rather than change to a sign that you put labels on both sides, because then you have to buy a whole different set of hardware to mount them on the poles that we have. And then there's things, avenue, how do you spell avenue? If you need to fill up space, you can spell it out. If you're running out of space, you can abbreviate it AVE. If you're really running out of space, you can go to AV. So there's a lack of perfect consistency for perhaps among signs, although we do try to be consistent. But there will be variations of sometimes you'll see like Potawatomi that's on the overhead here. It doesn't say street. It says Potawatomi, and does it really need to say street? Probably not, especially if you're trying to fit a long word, relatively short thing. So that's some creativity that needs to exist in the sign making process. Some other things, the really nice North Broadway sign. We do have historic districts. We have made brown signs, street name signs in historic districts in the past. Well, you come to find out that brown's an acceptable color, and you have to have a resolution passed to prove that the city commission thinks brown is an appropriate color for historic districts. We haven't done that. We would probably need to do that at some point. Likewise, if you go off on a different font style that's outside the realm of standard, if you look on the internet, some historic towns have Old English style signs that are impossible to read unless you're walking. They should have there should be a resolution to support those as being as an approved style for them. We don't expect to do too much of that, but you'll probably see something here in the next month or three as we get further into this. Maybe some colors, maybe some different fonts than we anticipated. We do have a need for most of our streets to have a north or a south on them. Fortunately, we don't need east or west because they're all west of the Missouri River, so that helps. Don't ask me about West 7th. I'll talk to you about that after the meeting if you would like to. Kind of two different approaches for a general with opportunity to make a difference in signage is, do you choose a neighborhood and change all the signs in it? Or do you say, gosh, I think this main street through town is a highly visible corridor, so we focus on that? We haven't decided exactly how to do this. We're working with the city manager's office on what to do, because we would then provide a list to Deborah's group to prepare the signs so we could make rational progress toward that. That's kind of the short version of what we do. I've got the policy report with the different kind of styles of things that we like and don't like in here. And I think I've asked Deborah to talk a little bit about her program and how it works with ours.
Kansas Correctional Industries is a self-supporting state agency under the umbrella of Department of Corrections. And we provide meaningful work for men and women who are incarcerated. And we sell the products that they make, such as signs, traffic paint, a whole list of them. They're in your little packet I gave you, to cities and counties and governmental entities. We are not allowed to sell to the private sector by statute, so it's only governmental, schools, churches, that type of thing. We've had a partnership with Kansas Department of Transportation for well over 40 years, making their signs. So we are very familiar with the MUTCD, all the current standards that are required, the specifications that come out of that book, so we can work closely with their street department to give them what they want, but also make sure, help them stay within the guidelines that they're supposed to, so that you're compliant. What else do you want to know?
That's good.
Okay.
That's good. No, I think it's an important but relatively modest investment. Are we talking, like, for this year, how much are we talking in terms of, I think $25 per sign, that's what.
I think our cost from Casey and I will be slightly less than that, but the numbers that we've shown you here were our estimates preliminarily for somewhere, depending on what you want to do, 35 to 50 major intersections, or 70 to 100 residential intersections.
So the funding, the $10,000 you see here is a specific number because the city commission last year during budget season, one of the small enhancements we made, along with $10,000 toward park benches and picnic tables, we did $10,000 for street signs. So we still have budget for stop signs and repairs throughout the year, but this was that extra or small enhancement that the city commission authorized during the budget season last year.
Well, I think it's an important but modest investment in the appearance and the image of the city, and I do like the standpoint of the standardization for the signs of size, numbering, lettering, and color, and I do think it makes a difference. I know it makes a difference in terms of kind of the attractiveness of the city. In addition to safety, I mean, if the signs, it's just overall, I think, quality of life issue for citizens and people who live in the city, but also people who are visiting in terms of, making a good impression with respect to our city. So that's how I feel about it.
So what are the plans to identify the signs that need replaced?
We've been working on that. I need to ask Mike a couple more questions about, in certain corridors, if certain signs are still in very good shape.
Yeah.
Is there, we want to make sure that we're not throwing away good signs in areas. So we've worked on that quite a bit. The reason that the staff recommends the action that you're taking is to authorize me to enter into the agreement is so that we can present it tonight. We have a few other little things to work out, but then we don't have to come back to a commission meeting and delay it. So you just authorize the city manager to go forward with the agreement.
Okay.
And then we'll of course let you know when we start rolling it out and start putting the new signs up.
And I think this, right, and I know a little bit more about this because I've been interested in it, but it takes care of the product, right? I mean, we've had some challenges with respect to keeping that position filled,
right?
This
doesn't address the installation. What it does is it gives the installer, once we have one, and we did, but we don't right now, the freedom to do more installation and less manufacturing.
Gotcha. No other questions or comments? I entertain a motion.
I'll go ahead and move that we authorize the city manager to approve a sign fabrication agreement with the Kansas Department of Corrections.
Second.
Motion has been seconded. Begin voting with Commissioner Dedeky.
Aye.
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 Motion carried 4-0. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. She is not. Take it.
Want me to? Yeah, hold on.
We got you.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the claims for March 9th, 2019 through March 22nd, 2019 in the amount of $711,460.42. Net amount for payroll number 6, effective March 15th, 2019 in the amount of $333,482.68, which includes police and fire pension in the amount of $11,572.36.
Second.
Motion has been seconded. Begin voting with Commissioner Priceinger.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried 4-0.
We had one other item. I'm mindful of time and that we have an executive session, but I asked our public works director just to give us about 5 quick minutes on flood update, where we are, what we've been doing, what we can expect. So, Mike, 5 minutes starting.
Sure. Okay. Boom. 5 minutes. The flood, just when you think your year is off to a good start, you get a flood. We peaked out in the flood on Saturday at 31.1. It has dropped to 27.5 at this point, which is down 3.6. It's out of the Leavenworth Landing Park. This is the second highest on record. A couple things I would like to make sure the commission and the public understand is the Riverfront Community Center did not flood. The reason for the shutting down of the film festival was the interior building sewers were not able to get out into the main sewer line outside the building and were backing up into the drains and on the floors in the bottom level of the building. But the building did not suffer damage from that or from the river water. We installed on short notice Friday. We were told that the river was coming up 1.5 feet higher than it had been forecast, and the upper end of that forecast could have been essentially the top of the actual flood wall that we have there, and that was too close for comfort for me. It was recommended that we take steps to raise the flood wall to protect us from 1 foot over that, and that caused the installation of the big bag system, and took about 2,000 sandbags to raise 1 foot over the wall once we got the big bag system in. It was an amazing feat to watch. It was a true community effort. All the city forces departments were involved, and we had absolutely stellar support from our community, not just contractors who supplied material and equipment, but we had a steady stream of people asking what they could do to help. Fortunately, we were able to help to get this done without having to rely upon them to get their hands dirty and get into the work area. The wastewater plant was surrounded by floodwaters, but it did not flood. We suffered no meaningful damage from the flooding in any of the buildings. There are some repairs to the bar screens and some of the grit moving equipment, but the waters are receding. We treated wastewater the entire time. There was about 24 hours when we were pumping more water into the plant than the plant can handle. We did have wastewater spill of about, I think it's 1.5 million gallons or something over a 24-hour period. Not much compared to what was running down the river, but nonetheless, we would certainly recommend people stay out of the floodwaters in any case, but especially in the vicinity of the wastewater plant. Other city facilities, airport FBO offices and hangars were completely flooded up to within a few feet at the peak of the roof. The airport is closed until further notice. It's expected to reopen at some point, and our FBO operator has stated he expects to rebuild the facilities and right along be back in business as early as he reasonably can be. 2nd Street will reopen when the water recedes. We'll move the barricades back. We've had a few calls from businesses asking if they can move the barricades, and ask our guys to go look, make sure that we don't want people driving through the water to get to someplace, but if it's possible to help people be open or have access to facilitate that. Brush disposal site is closed until further notice. The city does not plan to offer any alternate disposal sites. The site works really well for what we do out there. You cannot duplicate that anywhere without a huge production. So it will remain closed until we're able to reestablish it. Leavenworth Landing Park is closed until they get it cleaned up. Same thing with Riverfront Park. The parking lot and campground are closed. Leavenworth Waterworks is working on some issues with their north intake. They have huge pipes across the road on a temporary basis right now. In fact, they needed about 1,500 of our sandbags that the Lansing Correctional Facility inmates had built 3,000 sandbags for us Saturday. You can never have too many sandbags. You don't know what you're going to need them for. We needed them for the waterworks today. We helped load them, and they installed them where they needed them up there. 3 Mile Creek Trail is closed, and I'm proud to report that animal control was not involved in the flood in any way whatsoever because they're on much higher ground. Spring outlook, everyone's kind of the dirty little secret is out. We are in for a spring flood of perhaps major proportions. Don't know what that means, but the federal government has colored in Leavenworth along the Missouri River and identified it as major flooding, which basically means over 30. It may be back in May. We'll keep an eye on it. 5 minutes.
Yeah, again, the help that we received from our business community, city employees who were patching potholes the entire day, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then went straight from that to lifting 2,000 sandbags. I know I got out of there, and I think everybody got there about 11 o'clock Friday night, so thank you to all those city employees who put in a very, very long day that day. So.
Yeah, we did have support from Leavenworth County besides emergency management. They sent a crew. I thought it was 6 people. I was told today they had 10 people assisting our staff filling sandbags at the community center, at the service center Saturday morning, and we actually used about half of the bags that they made over at the treatment plant to shore up some of their sandbag walls, so that worked out really well. And I saw Mike Spickelmeyer this afternoon and thanked him and his employees profusely for that.
Do you have any estimate on how many tons of silt are down in the landing park? Is it comparable to 2011?
No, it's interesting. In 2011, the river was up for months.
Yeah.
And the reports that I'm getting back are the water was up and the water was down in a fairly short order. It is a very thin layer of silt. Did not build up at all like it did in 2011.
That's good.
And animal control, I know the chief's happy that we have a new facility because in 2011 we were evacuating animals and putting them in old Walmart. And
I don't miss that.
Yeah, no, I'm sure the chief doesn't either. So it was a good job by everyone. Came up quick, and I take it that we're probably going to leave the sandbags in place right now.
Yes, sir. There may be minor changes to facilitate access in the meantime, but my personal recommendation and professional recommendation is June's a good time to take the sandbags down. Maybe.
The highest crest on record was July 28th, remember that?
Yes, that is true, and we'll watch that.
Yeah.
It's pretty wet up north.
Right.
We won't take them down until we're pretty confident that we won't have flooding, but they can't forecast the river very closely more than about a day ahead.
You had an acronym, FBO. What does that stand for?
So that's Fixed Base Operator. That is the company that essentially rents the property the city has at Fort Leavenworth Airport, and they operate what's called a fixed base, where they can get pilots and flight people can get fuel, information, and that sort of thing. So the term is used as FBO, Fixed Base Operator. And we do actually have flood insurance on the building.
Yeah, he's dead.
Some of the buildings, or some level on most of the buildings, it's kind of complicated, but we've notified the adjuster that this has happened, and they'll be coming they said, call me when the water's down and we can get out there, which that might be a while.
Yeah. I'd like to thank the city manager and his team, including especially the department heads, in terms of good situational awareness and then adaptability in terms of having to call an audible on Friday, and then all the great hard work that went in on Friday and Saturday, and I guess Sunday also, particularly at the, both places, but particularly I think on Sunday also at the waterworks plant. So I know all the commissioners, I'm pretty sure all feel the same way. So thank you for your hard work and dedication.
Yeah, I also just want to say thank you as well, too, because I heard Chief was out there as well, tossing some sandbags. So everybody that got involved, yeah, we greatly appreciate it. All right.
Thank you.
Good. All right. Next item on the agenda, executive session. How much time do we need?
10 minutes.
10 minutes? What is that, 8:31? All right. I move to recess into executive session to discuss the acquisition of real property pursuant to the preliminary discussion of the acquisition of real property exception per KSA 75-4319 B6. The open meeting to resume in the City Commission chambers at 8:41 by the clock in the City Commission chambers. City Manager Paul Kramer, Assistant City Manager Taylor Tedder, and City Attorney David Waters are requested to be present during the executive session.
Second.
Motion has been seconded. Begin voting with Commissioner Dedeky.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Motion carried 4-0. session. At this time, I will entertain, I'll have a motion that the city commission will decline.
Yeah, did you?
Sir?
I'm sorry, did you hear that, did you come out of executive session? Did you
Oh.
bring gavel us back in?
Okay, motion to come back in session?
No, just need to gavel the city.
Oh. All right, okay. Thank you, sir. At this time, I will move that the city commission decline its rights to match the offer price for lots 9 and 10, block 44, owned by the Youth Achievement Center. We are under the impression that the funds will be used toward youth activities.
Second.
Motion has been seconded. Begin voting with Commissioner Dedeky.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Motion carried 4-0. Any other discussions among the commissioners? Commissioner Dedeky?
I have nothing.
Commissioner?
I did notice, I haven't talked with Commissioner about her, I know she's not here, but I think she was at the groundbreaking for the new Kansas City Airport yesterday or the day before. And she's on a Kansas City area-wide transportation committee. I suspect she got invited there, and that was, I'm glad that she represented us.
Yeah.
Hope that, and I think we all look forward to that new airport, which is going to open in 2023, I think they're saying now.
Yes.
But at least it's started.
Yes.
We're going. So.
All right. Motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
All in favor?
I second. I second. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.